welcome to another edition of the House Whisperer Show on WWDB Talk 860. I'm Barry Reisman, inviting you to stay tuned for expert advice about maintaining your house from the roof to the basement. Let's introduce professional home inspector Jack Milne. Jack, welcome back to WWDB. And you have a special guest with you today. Why don't you tell everybody who is on the air?
Well, thank you, Barry. And as always, I do like to thank WWDB for this opportunity to spend a little bit of time with my listeners. Today's topic's real special. Once a quarter, I try to bring all my sponsors on so that you can hear firsthand about the things that deal with the maintenance of your home. And this episode, I think, is truly special because we have Rob Bowie from Bucksmont Inspections. And Rob has probably one of the most difficult tasks out there, and that's evaluating on-site sewage systems. We have spoken over the past week or so, and I think we have a good bunch of questions and answers and dialogue that we can put before our listeners, Barry. But before we kick in, I do want to thank my sponsor. So, hey, Rob, why don't we start with you?
Hey, Jack. Thanks for having me on.
Now, if people want to reach out to you, how do they find you? How about a website or a phone number?
Yeah, the website is buxmontinspections.com, and the email is bmseptic@comcast.net.
Okay. And then, of course, we have Borough Exterminating, and their website is boroughexterminating.com. A good phone number for them is 610-586-5640. Pest Blaster, last week you heard Mike Hanner on the phone, and we actually spoke about how to tighten your house up, especially this time of year because of those little things called mice. But their website is pestblaster.com, and of course they deal with radon testing, mold testing, wood-destroying insect evaluations, as well as pest removal. Again, brainfleshgear.com. I reached out to Kevin Zollner, and I think within the next 2 weeks, he's kind of like the artistic guru that puts Brain Flesh Gear together. So he said he would come on the air and we could spend some quality time with him. And then, of course, my own company, which is Tri-County Inspection Company. Our website is tcinspect.com. And for you folks in Bucks and Montgomery County, 215-295-2030. If you're listening way up there in the Lehigh Valley, 610-346-7880. And for South Jersey, 856-853-4224. Because I've got Rob on the air today, I'm going to forego the email box, but I know in about 2 weeks, I've got a whole bunch of questions that I've gotten from my listeners, and I'm just going to do a show that's going to be dedicated to those questions. So, Rob, why don't we go into your background and how you got involved with this career path that you chose?
Sure. About 24 years ago, I started a job simply pumping out septic tanks and dealing with the maintenance of septic systems, and went out on my own to do real estate inspections, and then it sort of morphed into soils and whatnot and septic system designs. And at this point, we're mostly doing real estate inspections and also consulting for new septic systems, which involves soils testing and designing of new systems, generally with a county health department, such as Bucks or Montgomery County or individual municipalities up in the Lehigh Valley. So we sort of morphed out really well and cover the gamut with real estate transactions.
Well, for our listeners, let's talk about the types of on-site sewage systems that are available. I mean, we've got from the old school to thoroughly modern systems now that use aeration.
Right. In today's world, Jack, there are many different technologies out there for new systems, lots of alternate systems that we have drip irrigation systems, we have drip tubing below ground. They have computers with them and whatnot, so they're really advanced with technology. And we do have the old standby sand mounds, which first came out in the mid-'70s, which even those were replaced with more low-profile mounds. So there's plenty of technology out there for aesthetics for the homeowner for a new system.
Yeah, it's amazing because I thought the sand mounds was the latest technology, and man, if we're talking about a system that's now 30 years old plus, it's amazing how much has really changed through the years.
Right. Right. Yeah. Usually, aesthetics is a huge driving force with septic systems for the homeowner, and with the aesthetics also comes a lot of maintenance with these newer type systems. And I always say to the potential buyer or to the homeowner looking to put in a new septic system, generally, the more aesthetically pleasing the new septic system, the more involved with maintenance they are. And it's something really important. And if you're going through the process of putting in a new system, is sometimes to consider the maintenance with these newer systems.
I know with especially Bucks, Montgomery, Chester counties. I mean, these areas have been around for so long that the evolution of on-site sewage has really changed.
Right.
Years ago, we had cesspools, which is basically just a big cylinder lined with concrete block, and the sewage would just drop into the bottom and dissipate through the soil.
Right.
And then we got involved with what I call standard septic systems, which is a tank and a leach field. But Rob, why don't you tell the folks the difference between, say, a standard septic system and a sand mound?
Well, generally a standard system, Jack, most people think of a standard system as a conventional drainage field where you put in trenches underground, and those systems have been around since the 50s and 60s at this point. And on suitable soils, they are still installed in a lot of different areas in the greater Philadelphia area. Conventional drainage field where you just have a septic tank, and then you have a drainage field with typical trenches in the ground. But if the site has shallow bedrock or exhibits a higher water table, then these mound type systems come into play to avoid any type of potential groundwater pollution or whatnot. You would essentially build your drainage field on top of a bed of sand, and then cover the entire drainage system with about a foot of soil for structural and containment purposes. But usually the difference between a mound type system and a conventional drainage field are the soils itself to which they're being installed on.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you this, Rob. What maintenance is required, and how often should a system be evaluated by Bucksmont?
Right. Well, generally, Jack, the Pennsylvania DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, and local county agencies such as Bucks, Chester, Montgomery County, they all recommend to have your septic tank. All septic systems, whether you have a conventional drainage field or a mound-type system or some alternate system, they're all going to have a septic tank. And septic tanks should generally be pumped out every 3 years. If you have an older tank, say like a 500-gallon tank or a 750-gallon tank, and you have a family of 4, you might want to consider it every 2 years to pump out your tank. But that's the cornerstone of all maintenance with septic systems, is pumping out the tank. If you have a mound-type system, then you're going to have, with the septic systems installed beyond 1983, you're going to have an effluent pump, and they generally last 10, 12 years, so they're going to have to be changed out. And then with these other technology systems, such as a peat system, they have peat moss inside of a separate tank to a low-profile mound. The peat moss has to be changed every 10 to 12 years, in addition to a pump and in addition to having the septic tank pumped out. And then finally, with the drip irrigation systems, they're about 10-year-old technology in this area. They have many moving components, such as solenoid valves and disc filters and actually miniature computers, and they require much more maintenance and checking up on, usually yearly, in addition to the tanks being pumped out and whatnot. But the cornerstone of all maintenance is having a septic tank pumped out every 2 to 3 years. That's a good average.
Yeah, I try to advise my clients, if there's 2 people moving in, you might be able to get away every 4 years. If there's 4 of you, then you should do it every 2 years. And
right.
It's kind of an easy way to remember the 2x4 and 4x2 rule. But at the same time, I try to advise them to use their anniversary date to pump it, not the wedding one. That's not a good one to remember at all.
No.
But the move-in date, because I know I always celebrate May 30th because that's one last year I pay the bank. So, if you can remember when you took possession of the home, I think it's an easier way to stay on top of it. And I know there's a few municipalities that actually require that, I think it's a code or a law or something, that you do have to pump the holding tank every 3 years.
Right. That's more of a state DEP. The state's pushing the maintenance on the local municipalities, and there's many townships through Bucks and Montgomery County that are requiring their township residents to have the tanks pumped out and to turn the slips in with their tax bills. So that is common. Yes.
How about that?
Yeah.
And with just so the folks understand, let's say, for example, when you flush the toilet and it goes into everything goes into a holding tank, the solids settle to the bottom and the liquids, or what they call, raise to the top, and then it goes into the next chamber out into the field. So, you have to be careful what really goes into that first holding tank.
On that happy note, guys, it's time for us to take a break. We could actually retitle this program Everything You Wanted to Know About a Septic System, but we're afraid to ask. And we'll be right back right after this with more information about your septic system. Don't go away.
Bowie Exterminating has been specializing in wood-destroying insect inspection and control for over 40 years, serving Philadelphia and the surrounding counties. All inspectors are state certified and ensure providing their clients with professional inspections and treatments. Bowie not only performs conventional termite treatments, but also handles special services like historic buildings and homes with wells, creeks, or ponds. The client is assured that all treatments will be performed safely when you hire Bowie to do the work. They also provide radon testing in their service area. Bowie's full-time office staff is available to help you schedule an appointment. Just call 610-586-5640 or send an email request to boroinspects@verizon.net. That's 610-586-5640 or email at boroinspects@verizon.net.
Specially created t-shirts by BrainFlushGear.com offer the extreme sports enthusiast an opportunity to have a clothing line available that suits their sport. BrainFlushGear.com understands that when we get the moment where we can jump on our motorcycles, wave runners, surfboards, snowmobiles, or skateboards, it can be priceless. They offer custom artwork including silk screening, transfers, and embroidery. Speak to one of their consultants today and they'll help you create your own Brain Flush. Visit BrainFlushGear.com or email them at contact@BrainFlushGear.com.
For your septic inspection and testing needs, please consider Bucksmont Inspections. They've been serving the Bucks and Montgomery County areas for over 15 years. As members of the Pennsylvania Septic Management Association, the Pennsylvania Association of Sewage Enforcement Officers, and the Pennsylvania Association for Professional Soil Scientists, Bucksmont Inspections can inspect your existing septic system or test for your new septic system placement. Please call Rob Bowie at 215-669-4213 and say you heard their ad on the House Whisperers Show.
As the weather gets cooler and the temperatures drop, the bugs might slow down, but the rodents don't stop. Mice and rats begin to invade homes during the fall and winter months, looking for food, warmth, and a comfortable place to nest. Don't wait for pesky rodents to invade your home. Fight back. Have your home baited and ready for their attack with Pest Blaster. Whether preventative or a full-blown infestation, give Pest Blaster a call at 215-295-5555 and they can discuss the solution to your problem. They also offer humane animal removal services for a wide variety of wild animals, damage repairs, and cleanups. Call them today at 215-295-5555 or check them out at pestblaster.com, servicing both New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Pest Blaster, 215-295-5555 or pestblaster.com for all your pest control needs.
Tri-County Inspection Company has been providing professional home inspections, commercial inspections, and historic property evaluations for over 25 years. Tri-County Inspection Company covers 13 counties, serving both New Jersey and Pennsylvania. They've performed inspections for over 70,000 clients and are members of the American Society of Home Inspectors, as well as the Pennsylvania Home Inspectors Coalition. They are licensed in both Philadelphia and New Jersey. For all of your real estate transactions, call Tri-County Inspections at 215-295-2030. For their New Jersey clientele, call 856-853-4224. In PA, call 215-295-2030. In New Jersey, 856-853-4224.
We are back with more on the House Whisperer Show. Jack Milne, who is the host every week, and his special guest, Rob Bowie of Bucks Modern Inspection. And this is a fascinating conversation, and I'm learning a lot, more than I ever thought I'd learn about septic systems. So continue. You're back on the air.
Yeah, thank you very much, Barry. Rob, if you're a city person moving to the country, how will life be different with an on-site system?
That's a great question, Jack. And a lot of times during inspections, we do have folks that are moving in from the city to the suburbs. And in the city, we just get our monthly or quarterly sewer bill, and you just mail the check off. But to the sewer authority. But with septic systems, we have to be a little bit more mindful of what we flush down the toilet, and it just doesn't go away like with the sewers, where the septic system, everything's being contained on the lot. So we got to be careful what we flush down the toilet, and also if homeowners in the suburbs that have a septic system want to go along and put a swimming pool or a shed or a deck, they want to really be mindful of where their subsurface components are, so they don't do any damage to the system. So that's a huge responsibility sometimes of knowing where your system is underground in conjunction with building either a swimming pool or a deck. So you definitely want to be mindful of where things are underground.
And I think, folks who live in the city almost take advantage of, the free sewers because months ago I did a show on people that actually blew out a system because the first thing they did was take their clean clothes out of a clean box and put them in the clothes washer, and did 11 loads of laundry, and then blew out the system. So, everything, you do have to be mindful, and it's not only the laundry, but, for example, if you want to repaint your home, you can't be washing the brushes in the sink anymore.
Right. That's another good point. As chemicals down the drains, when you're on the public sewer system, your wastewater tends to be diluted down by the large volume of wastewater being produced. But with your septic system, it's all from your house. And you're right, Jack. If you clean out your paint brushes or put in any type of additional harsh chemicals, that could really throw off the biological balance within your septic tank. And that's another great point about doing wash. You might want to space your loads throughout the week, especially with an older septic system with a smaller septic tank. Spacing your wash loads is a great idea.
Yeah, and, we think of, we have a clogged drain, so let's throw in some Drano. And so we have to keep a lot of things more natural. We don't suggest garbage disposals. Because of grease and fats and things, again, that affect the balance of the microorganisms that break the solids down. So let me ask you this, Rob. We see these commercials for some additives that will help with the on-site sewage and the breakdown of the matter. What's your thought?
Well, not even my thoughts, but more of the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection and our local county agencies that permit the systems. There are no additive chemicals that are recommended for septic tank performance. So we see these different commercials on TV with additives and whatnot, and there are none of those that are recommended for usage. And just simply pumping your septic tank out every 2 to 3 years and being mindful of what you put down the drain will usually suffice proper maintenance of the system. So no additional chemicals are needed for proper septic tank function.
And just so our listeners understand, Rob, approximate cost to pump out a holding tank? Generally,
Jack, 1,000 gallons to be pumped out in the greater Philadelphia area would be about $250 by a local pumper to pump out, $250 to maybe $260. Sometimes the manhole, which was all homeowners want to have their septic tank pumped out through the central manhole, not the inlet or outlet port. The ports on the edges of the septic tank are maybe 4 or 6 inches in diameter. The manhole's generally in the center. You want to have the pumper pump through the manhole. And many times they're underground, so if they have to be dug open, the pumper might charge $40 or $60 to physically dig up the manhole. But a lot of times people dig them up themselves, or they put access lids so the lid's right up to the ground. But generally $250 to pump out a 1,000-gallon tank is about the average cost.
See, and as I tell my clients, you're paying that, every couple of years. Imagine what you're paying on a sewer bill.
Oh, it's much greater. Exactly. The sewer bill is much greater than the pumping. If the pumping's done every 2 to 3 years, you do save money with the septic system as long as you take care of them and, you try to avoid any costly repairs and whatnot.
Now, Rob, how about life expectancy? I know it can vary, depending, on the lot. It depends on what the current system is. But what's the general life expectancy? And then how can you tell when it's ready for replacement?
Well, generally, Jack, the septic systems, you want to try to get 40 to 50 years out of them. Sand mounds generally came out in 1975, and I know last year we did a real estate inspection on a sand mound in Chalfont, which is in Bucks County, and the system was put in 76, and it was just working fine. The people pumped out the tank every couple of years. So generally with the newer systems, you can get a good 30, 40, 50 years out of them if you take care of them. And as far as when the homeowner is to know that replacement is on the verge is generally if you have sewage coming up to the ground, that allocates a regulatory malfunction. If it's backing up in the house, which is the worst case scenario, that the whole system outside is hydraulically overloaded and it can't absorb any more water and it's back into the house, that's an obvious problem. And a lot of these systems that predate any type of regulations, they might be working in the sense that they're not backing up into the house or coming up to the ground, but when you go through a real estate transaction, these inspections tend to be a little bit more strict, so a lot of those older systems are prone to be classified unsatisfactory for a real estate transaction. So there's a lot of times different reasons why homeowners come across the need of a new septic system.
And today, from what I'm understanding, the DEP or the Board of Health is changing the rules. Now it's based on maximum occupancy rather than number of bedrooms.
Right. The bedrooms is always the cornerstone, but a lot of times you can, if you're going to have greater personal usage, it doesn't hurt to maximize or oversize the square footage of your septic system. It's always cheaper to, not so much cheaper, but it's more cost effective to do it all at once and not just go with the minimum sizing of the system. But if the people are going to take over the ownership of the house or have a house built and you have a pretty big family, it definitely pays to maximize the size of the house based on proposed usage. That's a good point.
And we know teenagers use much more water, and as well as babies,
right,
much more water than adults. And every once in a while, Rob, you and I have both seen it where they add an outbuilding. And they make it, first it was the barn, and then all of a sudden it becomes a stable, and then now you have a stable mate. And they say, well, can we tie back into the original system?
Right. That sometimes, and even more with the baby boomers, with our parents and whatnot, and people wanting to bring their family home, and then you're going to finish the space above the garage and whatnot and make an apartment. That gets really complicated as far as regulations, and we see it all the time. But unfortunately, to add on apartments and in-law suites and whatnot on a regulatory basis, it's just not as simple as connecting it to your septic system. Even if you have a sand mound, say it's 8 years old, that sand mound would have been designed for a certain flow rate, and just to start adding apartments and in-law suites, septic systems are not generally sized for that, and usually you'd have to go through the process of either upgrading the size of your system or sometimes, unfortunately, putting in a whole new system to accommodate the additional flows.
I'm just going to jump in here, guys, because we're almost out of time listening to you talk. One of the worst days of my life was we don't have a septic system. We have a sewer. Was when my sewer pipe backed up, and I don't want to go through that again. I imagine having the septic tank back up is probably just as bad, but it wasn't. Yeah. It was no picnic. Let's put it that way. We are coming to the end, so Jack, I know you'd like to thank Rob and give him a chance to give his number.
One more time, how can let's do some contact information for you.
Sure. Anyone, we covered a lot of information there. Anyone can call me direct on my cell phone with any questions. My cell phone direct is 215-669-4213.
And since we're running out of time, preview for next week is going to be heating bills. As they are expected to rise, what can we do? So it's another Sunday, and as I always like to say, please spend time with friends and family, and we'll see you next week on The House Whisperer.
And let me invite everybody to tune in again next week for another exciting edition of The House Whisperer Show with professional home inspector Jack Milne. To listen to previous programs, or if you have any questions, visit thehousewhisperershow.com. I'm Barry Reisman. Thanks for tuning in to WWDB.
So hard. Now everything is easy 'cause of you. And I'll light the fire while you place the flowers in the vase that you bought today.